Am I wrong for not wanting to go to the funeral now? Recently, my grandmother passed away. I'm 30 now, and I hadn't seen her in person for about 10 years, though we spoke on the phone a few times, usually through my dad, with whom I have a complicated relationship. My parents separated when I was around 2, and for a while, I spent weekends with my dad. That stopped around 4th grade, maybe earlier, when he started dating someone and prioritized her and her kids over me. He became distant, rarely answering my calls, and when he did, it felt like a burden for him to pick me up. He would often drop me off at an aunt or uncle's house instead of spending time with me. He wouldn't even call on my birthday, yet he spent thousands of dollars on gifts for his girlfriend's kids. Once, he even invited me to her daughter's birthday party after completely ignoring my own birthday. He once promised to take me to a father-daughter dance but ignored my calls the day of. My mom had to call him from a different number just to get him to answer. He couldn't be bothered to take me to soccer tryouts, but he drove over an hour to his girlfriend's daughter's cheerleading competition. Despite all this, I've always tried to be the bigger person and give him grace. I was the one maintaining the relationship, but as I've gotten older, I'm tired of trying. I invited him and my grandmother to both my high school and college graduations, which they attended, but I haven't seen either of them in person since my college graduation 10 years ago. I'd occasionally send my dad life updates via text and pictures or call him, but he rarely reached out first. And when he did, it was usually to show off in front of my grandmother, quickly handing her the phone to appear like a caring father. I went along with it because I cared about my grandmother and wanted our brief conversations to be positive. The last time I spoke to my grandmother was when she was in the hospital. She seemed in good spirits before her surgery and assured me she'd be fine. I didn't call back afterward, not because I didn't care, but because I didn't want to be a bother, and truthfully, I struggle with hearing bad news. A part of me didn't want to face the possibility of losing my last living grandparent, especially the only one I ever truly knew. During the holiday season, I was overwhelmed with work. Usually, I'd reach out to my dad with a Happy Thanksgiving or Merry Christmas text or call, but this time, I didn't, and, per usual, neither did he. Then, out of nowhere, he texted me to say my grandmother had died. And honestly, I felt relief. I loved her, but our conversations always had an undercurrent of tension. She often expressed disappointment that I didn't visit, but a big part of that was avoiding the accusatory energy I felt from his side of the family. My dad, being the oldest male sibling and one of the more successful, is seen as infallible by his siblings. Even when I did visit, though less frequently, my aunts and cousins acted like it was my fault I didn't come around more, ignoring the fact that my dad made me feel unwanted by dropping me off at relatives' houses and not picking me up until late Sunday night. I never wanted to argue with my grandmother, but she only heard the version of events my dad chose to share, not the truth. I often felt like my dad used her as a shield to deflect from his own neglect and lack of care. Trying to be considerate, I called my dad after she passed to check on him. He casually said, "Don't worry, I added you as a grandchild to the program." That comment caught me off guard and felt incredibly insulting, like he was implying I didn't deserve to be listed as her grandchild. I remember saying, "Well, I am her grandchild," and the conversation just fizzled out, but his comment deeply unsettled me. He also asked if I had spoken to any of my cousins on his side. When I said no, his tone made it seem like that was my fault. I haven't spoken to them since 2015, and it feels awkward to reach out now. At any point in time over these 10 years, he could have easily shared my number or encouraged them to contact me, but he didn't. I've often found out about major family events on my dad's side only after they happened. Even when my grandmother was moved to hospice, he never told me. Now, I'm anxious about attending the funeral. I want to go and pay my respects to my grandmother, but I'm worried about how people will perceive me. I don't want any drama, but I also hate feeling like I'm not allowed to grieve just because I haven't seen her in person for the past 10 years. I don't want to face accusatory questions or be treated like an outsider.